Hello and welcome to Chicory's maintenance video series. This week we're working on the low pressure pump for the water maker. Now this pump serves two purposes. You can see I have a T-valve here, and what this allows me to do is pull ocean water and either pump it through these four filters before it goes to the high pressure pump for the water maker, or if I flip it up in this position, it takes all of the 50 psi 20 gallon per minute pressure and sends it up to the foredeck for a saltwater washdown. What works really great when we're pulling up the anchor and need to clean the chain and the anchor. Today when I started the low pressure pump to make water, in between the pump and the motor, it was gushing water. You can see I have some towels down. I made quite a mess. So I need to remove the pump by taking the hoses off, unscrewing it from the floor, disconnecting the electrical. I'll pull this out, I'll put it on a bench, and I'll show you how to rebuild it. But in the meantime, I'm going to remove this from this area. I'll be back in a minute. So I have the pump on the bench. I left all the plumbing on it because that doesn't really matter. So I'm going to remove what's called the volute. This end of the pump is called the volute. And I'm just going to remove the 4 bolts. The nice thing about this is this pump is stainless steel. So hopefully I have minimal corrosion issues inside here, even though it's pumping salt water all the time. Looks like it's pretty good condition. There is some cavitation damage there. So here's the impeller, and this impeller screws onto the end of the shaft. And I'm going to tip this up just for a second so I can show you. So there's a little plug on the end here. I'm going to take that off. And you can see it has room for a standard screwdriver. So I'm going to put the standard screwdriver in there so I can hold the shaft of the motor still. And then I'm going to turn this counterclockwise. There it goes. So here is how the impeller works. Water sucks in there, centrifugal force blows it out the edge, and then it's brought in through the pump. And so there's a spring-loaded seal. This is the part that I'm replacing. That's not supposed to do that, but that might be why the issue had an issue. There's definitely some corrosion. Yeah, there's more corrosion on there that I like. I'm going to get a magnifying glass so I can see exactly what's going on and a flashlight. I'll be back in 1 second. So I don't know if you can tell, but it's super bright out here. The sun is shining very brightly. So I'm just grabbing a magnifying glass and a flashlight to see exactly what's going on. They're just between the seal and the shaft. There is some gunk, corrosion, and I think part of it is from the seal. I'll show you the new seal, but my new seal is actually all compacted and together. It didn't break apart like this. So I think part of what's going on here is the seal actually corroded. So I'm going to have to clean this up a little bit, get that gunk off. I'm going to get some penetrating oil and some Scotch-Brite so that I can clean this up. I'll be back in a second. So I'm back with some blaster and some Scotch-Brite. I'm just going to douse that a little bit. Try and get this cleaned up. Like I said, it is for something that's all stainless steel and supposed to be specifically made for this saltwater environment, I'm not super impressed with this shaft. So I'm just gripping the seal and trying to pull it off a little bit. Obviously I don't want to squeeze too hard because I'll actually cinch it on the shaft. I'm getting some resistance, of course, because I'm going over the rust. I'm actually destroying the seal, which is not a big deal because I'm going to pull it off, but it's coming off in pieces. So that's the next part of the seal. I'm going to use some paper towel and clean up some of the gunk that's in there. I've got a little bit better access to the shaft, so I'm going to put just a teeny bit more penetrating oil on and try and polish it a little bit more. There's an O-ring here that seals, so I'm just going to remove this and put it inside because it's so important. I don't want to damage it. Definitely not crazy about that. I'm going to undo these bolts. So there's the rest, one seal, and then the other seal is right in there. So I'm going to set this aside. And this shaft is quite corroded. I can see why it was leaky. I don't know if I'm going to be able to actually get this shaft clean enough. I'm going to go get some emery cloth to clean that up a little bit. I'll be back in a second. That is really, really bad. I am super disappointed with how bad this shaft is. You would think they would have a, I mean, everything's made of stainless steel, but they have a mild steel shaft on this, which of course is just an awful shape. Super disappointed with this. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Well, I guess we'll see once I clean this up and put the new seals on. Tracy's finding me some sandpaper right now, so I'm going to pull this seal out. Just got to tap it from the back side. Popped out very easily. That seal is perfectly intact. Just going to clean that out. There's no, obviously it's stainless steel, so there's no rust or issues with this. Okay, so now it's just a matter of cleaning up the shaft and reassembling. So I have just like a manicuring emery file here. I use these because they work pretty well. I'm just trying to clean up some of this rust. I'm using the rougher side first, and it seems like it's doing a pretty good job. All right, so I'm going to take the camera down and show you a close-up of what's going on here. I think it's about as good as I'm going to get, so hopefully this will do the trick. I'm going to flip this over, and then I'm going to grab the camera. It's so bright out here, I'm having trouble seeing if I'm in focus or not, but I think this is. So you can see that the shaft is completely pitted there, a lot of pitting there. This whole part of the shaft was just covered with so much crud. You can see it's pitted as well, but now at least I have somewhat of a shiny surface. I'm going to show you the seals next, but the seals spin with the shaft, so I'm hoping that there's a chance that it'll actually seal, or at least it won't leak like the flood I had before. So I wanted to show you the seals and what I was talking about specifically. So this seal goes into the back part of the pump, and it has this ceramic face, and this one has a graphite little ridge. I'm going to see if you can see it a little bit. There you can. And so these two rub together at high speeds. Both of those are stationary. Well, this is stationary and this spins with the shaft, and these two surfaces rubbing together won't allow water through. That's why I believe that this will work. This spring that's built in here, obviously this one rusted apart and shot apart when I took it apart, but this allows a little bit of compression so that this graphite is pushed against this ceramic. And this is exactly how a dripless shaft stuffing box works, a dripless stuffing box. It has ceramic and graphite that go together. So I'm hoping that because this spins with the shaft, that the fact that this is so pitted is not going to be a huge issue. If it is, then I actually have to replace the motor. So I'm going to put these in, and I'll show you that right now. So once again, I have the two seals here. The first thing I'm going to do is just move this aside so you can see just a little better. Move this. So here is the back side of the pump, and you can probably see this silver part here. That's where these rubber ridges go against, and so this holds itself in place and just seals in. So I'm just pushing that in with my hands, and it's seated in there. That's great. Now I'm going to move this aside for a second. I'm going to flip the motor up, and I'm going to slide this over the shaft. Now this has clearance. There's no issue there because this isn't supposed to touch the shaft. Only this is. So I'm going to put these bolts back in. So now the seal goes in, and this is the moment of truth because the little rubber seal popped out, but I'm popping it back in, and the spring's working. And like I said, this, if I spin the shaft, I don't know if you can see, but the seal is spinning around, spring and everything. So I'm just putting some pressure on there. And hopefully, like I said, that'll seal. Then the impeller goes on. I've got a little bit of crud on the back side there, so I'm just going to clean that up just a little bit. I'm going to turn this on clockwise, and I'm going to tip this just for a second, put the screwdriver in the back just to hold the shaft, and I'm going to just tighten this a little bit, just hand tight. I can hear the seals against each other, so I think that's compressed very well. It sounds very good. Just going to replace this rubber cover on the back. I'm going to flip this back up, and I'm going to go get my O-ring. Use this piece of tissue paper. Just clean the O-ring area. So I have the O-ring out here. I have some waterproof silicone grease here. I'm just going over the O-ring with. Just want a light layer to prevent any kind of binding when I tighten it down. Now, one of the things that you may be able to see is when this was assembled at the factory, they pinched the O-ring just a little bit. So I'm going to make sure that that is at the top of the pump, not that that really matters, but that it lays flat so it shouldn't affect the sealing surface. So now I'm going to take the rest of this assembly, I'm going to lay it on top. Make sure that the O-ring stays in place, which it did. I'm going to take the bolts from below. Now I'm going to lay the pump down and tighten it down the final time. So, the pump's back together. I'm going to take it in the boat and put it in right now. Hopefully this works. And let me show you what I'm doing here. So, if I'm making water, this valve takes ocean water and then puts it to the pump if I have it switched this way. If I have it switched this way, it pulls water from my freshwater system, sends it through the pump, and then through these filters to do a freshwater flush. And how I operate that is just by opening this valve. So I'm going to open this valve just a little bit, and you can see I'm putting water pressure into the system. So what that's allowing me to do is purge the air out. So I'm going to shut this off again. I'm going to go back and switch this to seawater, and then I'm going to flip on the motor and see it's definitely dripping. I'm just going to see if it seals up. And it definitely looks like it's still leaking. I've got 45 psi right now. Yeah, shut it off. That is definitely leaking. That is super disappointing. So this has leaked in the past, and then it stopped leaking. So I'm going to wait for one more second and see if I start it up again, if it does the same thing with the leak. I just think that shaft on that motor is just too far gone. One more time. Spraying water. Okay, that means I have to replace the motor. Super disappointing. I'm showing you the shaft here again because I'm going to buy a new motor and redo the process you just saw, but with a new motor. I'm going to take this motor and try and repair the shaft as an experiment for myself and also to keep it as a spare. Had this happened in the Bahamas and I needed to repair this and I didn't have access to a new motor, I would have cleaned up the black spots you see better and use something like JB Weld or some of the epoxy that I have on board to repair the shaft, and I think that possibly could have worked, but I don't want to take that chance because the water making is so important to us. So I am going to get a brand new motor and rebuild this. Until next week, thank you very much for viewing, subscribing, commenting, and liking my videos.